Sudhir, and we have him here to present his work with us. He told me not to talk too much about him, but I'm going to say that Sudhir grew up in Bombay, grew up in India, went to the US to study architecture and to go to grad school in the US, worked with IMPay, worked with KPF, started his own firm, and finally moved and started working as a partner with FX Fowl for many years. And now he's retired from FX Fowl, but he's still a design partner or leading design at a company in Pune. So it's been an incredible journey, more than 50 years, and you can share it.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for making
Thank you. Well, thank you, Khushru, for inviting me. I am equally thankful for all of you to come here. I'm also honored and I'm humbled to be here. It's great to talk in front of young architects. It's interesting. Hopefully, we'll have a good dialogue afterwards. I was told by Khushru that I should tell you a little bit about my journey before I present myself. So, Khushru has already mentioned that I have been in the United States for a long time, actually almost 50 years I've been in New York. I did work with IMPay, which was one of the most incredible experiences of my lifetime, I would say. The thing that I can tell about IMPay, or his partners who are like Harry Cobb or James Fried, or James Fried is no more, by the way, but some of the most humble people I met in my life. I mean, IMPay was such a great designer, such a great mentor that you can look up to, and an incredibly humble man at the same time. I was fortunate enough to also work with KPF for a number of years. KPF, by the way, the firm, when I joined them, they were about 20 people. And by the time I left, we had already built an office in London, or we were building an office in London. And we were close to 300 or 350 people in worldwide in the KPF office. So I feel still privileged to be a part of that process of building up the firm. And then eventually I left, and with another colleague of mine at KPF, and we formed our own firm. And to our surprise, that firm grew from zero. Almost we were actually, the truth be told, by the way, at the end of the first year, we almost were bankrupt because we didn't have much work, and we were beginning to put money from our own pockets. So the reason I'm telling you is that it's not uncommon for most architectural young generation of architects to get that depressed at that point, because it's very difficult to find work. It is all of that stuff. So the good thing is that for some reason, after first year, we began to get the work. And for some reason, we grew so fast that within the third or fourth year, we had 30 people working in New York office. And suddenly, both the partners, me and Mark Strauss, we both felt that we were more doing administrative work and less design work, or my partner Mark Strauss was more into planning, and my passion was design. Neither of us doing what we wanted to do. So we had to find some solution. We said, what do we do? So we said, let's merge with somebody. And so we found this firm of FX Powell, which is a renowned New York firm, by the way. And they were looking for essentially a succession plan, as Bruce Fowle and Robert Fox were getting into the mode of sort of transitioning and all of that stuff. So they talked to us, and they thought we were interesting. I was 50, by the way, at that time. and they still thought we were young enough to merge with them, and so we merged. And the rest is history, as they say. So I mean, that's the background of my architectural journey. And by the way, I'm one of those people who don't have such a linear story of success. I came from a middle class family in India. So when I went to United States, I didn't have money to pay for my education. So I earned my money first working for a few years. Then I went to graduate school at Columbia. Then I went back and into the profession, and then the rest is history, as I would say again. So that's the brief journey of my personal set of the life. With that, let me talk about today's presentation, and another just a background point of information is that I did step down from the partnership of FX Fowl about 2 years ago, as required by the partnership agreements. At the age of 72, you are supposed to step down from partnership. So I did step down from the partnership. I am not retired, as Khushru said. My official title there is still Senior Principal Emeritus. I still have an office there. I have a secretarial staff and I have all of that stuff. But I don't physically go to the office anymore. And now, about a year ago, I joined this firm called Arcwort, which is based in US with offices in Pune. The design studio is in Pune with an office in Ahmedabad and Goa. But it's a moderate sized firm. It's not a huge firm, although it may sound like it's a global conglomerate of some sort. But it's a moderate sized firm. I have some of my colleagues from the studio here, which they might participate in the Q&A period. And so for the last year or so, I have been practicing mostly from Pune studio with the support of all these young architects in the studio here. And I will show you some of the work we have done here. My intention of doing all of this, by the way, after all these years, is because I was born in India, in Ahmedabad actually, not in Maharashtra. Intention was to come back here and bring the global experiences that I have gained over the years, and bring basically a very, I would say, very pragmatic, at the same time intuitive design process to the studio here, so that if collectively we can bring the design to a higher standards here or high level here, it might be a great accomplishment personally for me as well. So that's the intention, and hopefully it will work. Hopefully it will happen. We don't know yet. It's too premature to say. So with that, in terms of the design, by the way, I don't work from a theoretical basis for the benefit of all of you. I have no theories. I have no theories to prove. I have no idea. I mean, I have read a lot of theories and points of views, but I work mostly from the point of view of philosophy. So my work is all these years, over the years, is all philosophically based. And so, I mean, as you know, many architects have great quotations of all sorts. And so I felt compelled to find my own sort of words. And in the process, by the way, there are two things that have guided me continuously in the design. One is to constantly search for meaning and usefulness. It's, in other words, it's not exactly form and function. Usefulness does relate to Mises' famous quote is form follows function, but it's better than that in my opinion, by the way. Not that I want to compare the master, but it's better than that. Meaning has a far deeper meaning in many ways than just the form. And because it can be in depth search for something that you may not even know when you start working on the project, you know. And usefulness also goes beyond just the functionality of the project. So that's my first principle of approach in work. And the second thing, in this world of globalization, I'm beginning to wonder whether the Bauhaus school of thinking, which started in 29 or something like that, the 1929 or 28 or that period, whether one fits all thinking makes sense anymore. And is it the right thing to do? I mean, many great works, I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I respect a lot of the great masters and their work, and actually I'm quite a bit influenced by their work as well. And yet the question comes in my mind is that as you go and travel around the world, it is, and it's a question for all of you as well, I think we are all looking maybe too similar. The question is, should we all look similar, or should we still remain or maintain our identity, as I would say, And the question is not the personal identity, but the question is architectural identity as well. I mean, I don't have the answers, but I do believe that if we as an architects carefully analyze the climate, maybe that might differentiate the architecture from place to place. While technology has influenced us in so many ways that many of you may know more about New York than I do today, because everybody has internet access and it's so fast and everything works so well. So my question to all of us is that in that scenario, what do we do? I mean, if you go to China, I have seen copies of my work done in China and built. Copies meaning absolute in every aspect. So in this scenario, what do we do, and what can we do? So I am posing that as a question. Should the climate be a great determining factor by which we can differentiate from place to place? Because climate is going to be always different. And the second question is culture, how would culture influence the work that we do? Should it influence? How far should you influence ourselves? Should we reinterpret it? Should we do whatever we do? So I think these two factors might influence our work to maintain even the architectural identity from a place to place. And it's just not by nation to nation. I mean, I don't have to tell you this, but India, you go 200 or 300 miles, the language changes. The question is, should the architecture differ or change as the climate changes? I don't know. I don't have an answer. But I'll show you what work that I have done and how I interpreted these two aspects to do the work. So that's the introductory part. And so I'm going to show you the first work that I did at FX Fowl. I published 10 ebooks in 2015. They are titled Thinking Design. The total, I think I've published about 65 projects in these books. And the 65 projects represent a tremendous diversity. Contrary to what people believe that in the United States, there is such a sort of expertise or creation of an expertise that if somebody does residential buildings, they just keep on doing residential buildings or an office building, whatever. In my case, by the way, I've designed projects of all sorts, from schools to bridges to hospitals to, you name it, high-rise buildings, low-rise buildings, university work, stadiums on a massive scale, on urban design, infrastructure work, subway systems, light rail systems. I've designed all kinds of things. Maybe I've been very fortunate to get all this work, but I urge all of you to remain diverse in the type of work you do as well. As a designers, I believe that if you are a good designer, you should be able to do anything, and so, or you should be able to design anything, as well, whether it's a door handle, or whether it is a big office building, or a high school, or whatever you get an opportunity to design. So So in terms of the climate, by the way, if I can talk about climate a little bit. Uh, in the climate analysis, by the way, it's very easy to just do a quick analysis to say that, okay, my energy gain on the building is this, and therefore I'm going to do Y. The question fundamentally that raises is, can you shape the building, the form itself, by understanding the climate? And my answer to that is yes, it is possible, because I've designed buildings where the shapes and forms of the buildings were informed by the climatic conditions as well. This one was an analysis done for a stadium actually in Baghdad. I was doing in Iraq, which is now totally a torn area, and I have not gone myself to Baghdad, but so we were shaping this stadium form based on the climatic conditions in terms of how we would minimize the impact of the heat or humidity and all kinds of things. So I just thought I'd show you the analysis of it. Then the next question is cultural aspect, and I show particularly this image. This was created not for here, but one of the things that happens, by the way, when people go into the Middle East, and particularly from United States, the Americans have general tendency to sort of generalize the entire Islamic world as being same. And the fact is, by the way, just like India, it varies dramatically from just few hundred miles to few hundred miles. And to even my amazing surprise, or pleasant surprise I should say, was that even within a country like Saudi Arabia, people in Jeddah think differently than in Riyadh, you know. And of course the climatic conditions change, the weather changes, people's attitudes are different, and so it's very interesting. Point I was making was, these are all the people from different parts of the Islamic world. They all look different, and they all think differently. Their professional ethics are different, by the way, which is amazing. And I was thinking that perhaps that should be an influencing factor in what we do. At the same time, there are certain commonalities also within the region, like, again, this happens to be for the Islamic world, and fundamentals, if you miss it, it could be a disaster for a valve design. I mean, this is too obvious. It's just a axis point towards Mecca for certain religious, not certain, all religious buildings have to face in a certain way. So you mustn't. But I'll give you a small story about this. The privacy, the way Middle East works, is very similar to India in many ways when you use bathrooms. And the privacy for a Middle East, people from Middle East, to such a great extent that even the sound is considered as intruding. So if you're using a bathroom and if you hear a sound from another unit right next to you, they feel that it has infringed on their privacy. So, and here we were working from New York, and we're trying to push these toilet partition systems where you can see feet of everybody using the bathroom, and they're saying this is not going to happen here. And none of the young architects in New York would understand that. The point I'm making is these subtleties of all these different cultural aspects are pretty important. You can't fight those either in designing, because it's just the way it is. There are certain things you can't do. I mean, it's just it's a part of life. You can't fight this thing. So, and then as I was saying, I published 10 books. So I'm going to show you just a few projects from few select books, and I'm going to show you specifically how each project took few of these things and then I applied in this case. So I did a competition for Perth Amboy High School in New Jersey. My competition, by the way, just for your information, was Peter Eisenman, Tom Main, and John Ronan, the four of us. And Tom Main and I were interviewed at the same time on the television, and I have no idea what he said on the television. So I just want you to be aware of it, that this is sort of part. The reason I'm bringing that up is part of the architectural practice is based on creating this intellectualization of work. And again, I'm going to question that to all of you. Is that all necessary? You can be intelligent without intellectualization of the work, as well. So one can have a philosophical basis or a theoretical basis. So that's the question that we can talk about at a later time. So in this particular, by the way, school, what we did was couple of things we did very interesting. This is a part in Perth Amboy, which is a low-income group, and many of the students would not go to the colleges. They would basically end their educational career at the high school level, which means they have to be prepared to work in a workplace as whatever, air conditioning repairman or serviceman for something, or whatever, all the service industries that people go to. So what we did was we created a campus. Instead of creating a single building, let me go back and show you. So what we did here was we intentionally created the entire high school as a campus, taking advantage of the topography, taking advantage of water conditions and all kinds of things. But the key was create campus. So the students, even at the end of high school graduation, would experience the college level education without going to a college level education, as we created academies, and the people would go from an academy to attend classes, just like at college or university level. And in the process, we were hoping that people would learn by the observation. And we had a lot of hidden sustainable components in it, so people hopefully would learn from that observation and all of that. So, and the other thing we did which was very important for us, was to create a visual porosity. So many of the buildings that touched the ground, and then they were put on pilotis or columns, and so create the visual transparency throughout the campus as well. So there's this couple of things that we did here, and unfortunately I didn't get the project. John Ronan from Chicago won the competition. His design was, by the way, brilliant as well. The second project I'm showing is from the second book. This book is just on bridges, by the way. I've designed about 5 or 6 bridges, I forget, and some other things. So I'm just going to show you one bridge. This bridge was designed in Dubai on a creek, and the span was about 1,600 meters. And when it came to us, they wanted an international competition, and we said, no, we can't do it. We have never designed a bridge, and I don't know what bridge means, and blah, blah, blah. And they said, no, you can do it. And so we finally said, okay, we'll do it. And we won. The point I'm making is about the bridges is that unless you are able to work closely with the engineers, actually that's true for all the projects, by the way, regardless. If you work closely and collaboratively with the engineers, your end results of what you do and what you accomplish is actually better than what you do just without that collaborative effort with all the expertise, I would say, not just engineers, but expertise in lighting and all kinds of things, So in this particular case, by the way, as you can imagine, the engineers had already aligned the entire project. The alignments were all set. And here we come, architects, and we are asked to do it. And the first thing we question is the alignment. And we question the vertical alignment and horizontal alignment, both. So you can imagine what happened. I mean, there was just a war, between the RTA, Regional Transportation Authority engineers, and us. And we said, well, it's a competition. We're going to do exactly what we want. And that's what we did, because it made no sense for us to have an alignment which curved over the waters and all of that stuff. It made no sense for us to have a straight alignment for the bridge. And so we created a bridge which is based on a classical form, by the way, which is arch. But these are combination of 2 asymmetrical arches that we did and created this bridge, which actually has a lot of interesting aspects culturally and climatically as well. If you look at the entire bridge, by the way, it has a fluidity of an Arabian calligraphy, which actually I love. By the way. Arabian calligraphy is sort of wonderful, as a amazing fluid form, and of course they also stylize it quite a bit depending on where you are. Like in Turkey, they make it very long and very beautifully done. And the other thing we did was, by the way, lighting. We designed the entire lighting for this bridge on the basis of moon calendar. For those of you who know history very well, the British used to use sundials. And the sundials is very common because, sun, after all, the Apollo, the sun, the god of, the sun god or Apollo, has been embedded in the Western history and the world and myths and religions, and so do ours, because life. And so there are a lot of sundials, but there was no moon dials. But the fact is that the Islamic world depends on the moon calendar. So we designed this entire bridge lighting based on the moon calendar. So on a full moon day, the bridge would be fully lit, and otherwise on that. So we went through the calendar thing, and lighting design was brilliant to work with as well. As a part of the bridge, by the way, we were asked to also design a station which was going to carry a light rail system, a green line station. I will just point out one thing, one simple thing, how climatic influences can be integrated extremely well. What we did was we designed a station based on a side platform station rather than a center platform station. By doing that, what we did was we reduced the air conditioning effect because the people who occupied the space was limited to only these areas, and the middle piece is basically open to the air. And the idea was that when the trains come and they push through this tunnel, they would basically push the hot air out. It's a very old, by the way, when the Britishers built the steam engines, this is exactly the principle that they used, by the way, open, so the steam can pass through, and the heat would escape from the top because the stations were not air conditioned. And so we use that same principle here, saying that the hot air will get pushed out, keeping the temperature in the middle air where it is not unoccupied is moderate, and then the side stations are basically kept fairly cool at a reasonable energy consumption. I have some beautiful diagrams, but I can't show all of that here. So then I want to show you, I somehow met this client in Saudi Arabia, Riyadh. This is book 3. And they gave us first few buildings to design, and it just grew. And finally I ended up designing 12 buildings for them. The construction cost is beyond comprehension of even me, by the way. It's about $2.5 billion worth of construction, which is all built. And one of the buildings, this building is not built. This is a museum, by the way, for their art collection, which doesn't exist. They're going to build this collection. So this building was being designed for that museum. And in terms of now I want to talk about a little bit of the process. I talk about the philosophical aspects, but the design process that I believe, and I think my colleagues here might vouch for it or might disagree with me later on, saying, no, he was just making stories. They can vouch for one way or the other. But many years ago, I was working on a project for a museum, and I devised a formula called, which is what is written here, approach equals understanding plus ideas multiplied by process. All it simply is, if you mathematically, by the way, and this is certified by people who understand mathematics more than I do, that it implies infinity. And meaning, the point I was making was in my own mind is that for achieving that one singular solution which makes the most sense, that might require a search to infinity to find that solution. It's another word is the Le Corbusier's famous quotation that creation is a patient search, is the same expression except it's done very differently the way I wrote it. It's like meaning you go through multiple solutions to find that one solution that you all feel, or yourself, whoever is designing it feels absolutely convinced makes sense, you know. And so I just showed that museum and how many options we did and all of that stuff. The interior space of the museum. I won't go through all the details of the climatic conditions and all of that. Khushru, am I okay on time wise, or am I?
You have all the time you
No, I don't want people to get bored here either. So I keep going, right? Okay. Uh, for the same client, I designed a residential building and the office building. I'll just show you one point in terms of the climatic, how we integrated climate in the details of it. And there was a facade on an office building, which is the south facade. So we applied actually a thin laminate of marble onto an insulated glass. By doing that, we made the entire facade pretty much translucent during the day and night both ways. And yet we maintained a vision, clear vision, facing towards the east, if I remember correctly. East. So the point I'm making is that these climatic influences you can carry out all the way into the details as well in whatever pursuit that you are pursuing as well. You know. Same client, by the way, as to my pleasant surprise, the client asked me to design a mosque, and I'm still under disbelief that this conservative part of the Islamic world would ask a non-Muslim to design a mosque. And so they did. And I told them, I said, I was very upfront, and I said, I don't know much about, the religion or any of that. And they said, don't worry, we'll guide you for basic fundamentals, but design is whatever you want to do. And so we did, and this is the mosque that we did. It's built, by the way. It's a very small mosque. It's a contemporary interpretation of many things, by the way, but I just thought I'd show you that. This is the projected drawing of all its components and the internal space. It's all basically bringing up filtered light and all of that stuff. So a small mosque, but I'm still very proud of it that I was given this opportunity, and it turned out to be actually quite beautiful. So very simple, sort of almost cubicle with faceted marble. The marble is absolutely flawless white marble on the outside, and of course the circulation system and everything is all totally respected. There's women's prayer room separated and all kind of. But I want to tell you one small detail as to how we can all miss. As you may know or you may not know, but in the prayer rooms, the women are separated. The women's prayer room is separate and men's prayer room is separate. So this rendering was being done in China or somewhere like that. And obviously what happened was this little boy who sits here was actually, they showed a girl. So we had to Photoshop it very quickly before I went to, because they didn't understand it, and so such is life. These aspects, one has to be very careful and constantly follow through. Book number 5, I just want to show you one tower, just a tall building, completely different typology. This is a 100-storied building I designed for Nakheel Group in Dubai. It didn't get built, by the way, unfortunately. But the ideas in this book on this building were very interesting. First, if you look at the plan, essentially it's the 3 components, so that you can optimize the views. By the way, many people have done those, the famous Corbusier plan voisin, where you have these cruciform forms and then the 3 pieces. So we reinterpreted all of that. And the most important thing what we did was, in this case, the 3 towers are of 3 different heights, 100, 60 and 40. And the 100-story building cast a shadow on 60 and 40. So automatically it would reduce its heat gain. And then the entire external facade integrated a water heating system, so the water heating system would was integrated into the facade, and that would supply to the whole project. And we designed actually a living machine, so because the water is very in short supply in Middle East, so every drop of water was going to be completely purified right on the site to almost drinkable level, And so we're designing this living machine with as well. I just show you one other competition. This was also in Saudi Arabia. This was called Al Faisaliya. It's the Al Faisaliya Foundation's work. And this building in the front. By the way, the thing I should point out is this is a huge, it's like a Rockefeller Center in New York, huge campus. And over the years, what they did was they assembled the work of architects, that some of the names you would know. Kenzo Tange has done few buildings. Norman Foster, this building is Norman Foster design. There was a Swiss architect, and there was one other, there were 4 or 5 architects who had done significant buildings on this project. And they asked us to be a part of the competition. And one of the tasks that was going to happen was that you had to demolish some of these buildings to make the total master plan work in a better way. So we did propose a number of things. As a part of the story was that there was a mosque designed by Kenzo Tange, and we replaced it. We were proposing to replace it. There was also a building designed by a Swiss architect that we were proposing to take it down. Actually, it was a very clever building done in the 30s, by the way. Amazing. Well, the facade treatment for building design in 30s, it was so contemporary in nature that it always used to surprise me. I said, how did these guys think in the 30s, or actually not 30s, 50s, think so progressively, so much ahead, that the building still looked amazing. Anyway, so it was actually very interesting. Just a couple of things to point out here from climatic aspects or cultural aspects and all of that stuff was that if you look at the tower, the entire facade is designed in such a manner that wherever there's a full glass, it never exposes itself to the sunlight. Never. It was a cruciform plan. All the corners were, and all the facades had a gradient facade done in a gradient form. By the way, I didn't win this competition either. It went to, actually it was won finally by Norman Foster. He had a relationship with the prince and he got the project, but the project didn't go ahead further, And at the end, nothing happened on it, but it was fun. It was fun to design this. The clients were amazing at the same time. And actually the best compliment I took out of it was that they were telling Norman Foster to follow our master plan on this. You can imagine what that must have done to their office, and so they were amazed by the master plan, the way we integrated all aspects of it as well. This is the section where the very interesting sections, and the hotel lobby was placed somewhere here. Oh, sorry, I did something wrong. The hotel lobby was somewhere here, so that it would look at the top of the building. Actually, that's designed by Foster. Put the globe in front of your eyes, and there were a lot of interesting aspects of the project. But I go straight to book number 7. I've designed a lot of infrastructure work as well. Second Avenue subway, by the way, it was a new subway system that is recently the phase 1 was completed. So I thought I'd just show you, and it's for your education more than anything else. This first phase is complete, by the way. You can go to the Google. I didn't take any photographs myself, or office doesn't have too many photographs either. But the first phase is complete, and it actually turned out to be quite a good project, by the way, for New York City. And in case of a subway systems, this is philosophically a big question mark. When you introduce a subway system within the city, what do you do? Do you go below ground? Do you go above ground? Pune is facing that, and of course Pune made a decision to go above ground. So in long term, it may have a serious impact on the city here. In New York, the decision was made, I mean, the entire subway system is below ground, because at the end of the day, the belief is that cities are meant for people. And so maybe in the long term, your ground plane might be your second level. Maybe we should all start thinking, designing like that here. Because between the flyovers and between all of this infrastructure which is going to be built above ground, what do? I mean, the spaces which occur below are absolutely terrible. And no matter what you do, it's very difficult to deal with those spaces. So anyway, when you're designing a subway system below ground, by the way, there are, just for your education purposes, there are two kinds of stations. One are basically tunnel stations and one are cut and cover stations. So tunnel station, you basically have this big boring machine that sort of bores the whole station through and through. I mean, it bores through the whole rocks and all kinds of thing, and then you create a tube. And then, so the first thing that happens is when you do that, you have to figure out a way to work with engineers so closely so that the tube is the most efficient dimension. Because it costs literally, by the way, millions of dollars per X meters, of length. It is, so you have to figure out that absolutely the most optimum section to design. And on top of that, you have to figure out a way to make it humanized, because below grade is uncomfortable for most people. The question is, how do you humanize the spaces? Can you bring the daylight? Can you do whatever you do, you try to humanize the spaces in such a manner. So I thought I'd point that out. And the first phase is built by this was a 96 station. It's pretty much built and it looks pretty good. Interior spaces are looking pretty good and all of that stuff. So I thought I'd show you that. I was very fortunate to work on the 2nd Avenue subway, by the way, in New York City. I've also done a lot of urban design work. Show you one project. This is in Dubai, 500 acres, 77,000 population. So what we simply did was we basically said we will divide into 8 neighborhoods and no cars. So all the parking structures were always, cars were in the parking structures. We made sure that every block had water or garden space views. Entire section through the entire environment was in such a manner that the air circulation was always very good. We designed light rail systems to go with it. We designed a park system to go with it. We designed everything within a walking distance of X feet, so that even in that unbearable climate during the summertime, people can still walk very easily. It's the part of the world, by the way, in the noon, there is no shadow. So you have to be you can't find your shadow. So what do? So every little bit of shade does help. So all of those considerations were given when we're designing this project as well. Just a commercial zone, by the way, image of a commercial zone. Finally, one last project from New York, and then I'll go to show you the projects we're designing out of Pune Design Studio. This is a building I designed for Lehman College in New York City long time ago. And it's built, and as you can see, the one clever thing, by the way, this is again how you can interpret and reinterpret what you do. So in this case, many of you may not know, but in the 60s, United States dramatically began to change in terms of cultural aspects, and it was almost a revolution. And then, of course, the Vietnam War, and in the 60s, the middle 60s, mid 60s to late 60s, there were enormous resistance by the younger generation in the United States. People got killed. The most famous of the photograph is in Kent University, a young girl, So those images are still in front of me. But the point I'm making is, so all the campuses, what they did was, as this resistance was taking among the younger generation, they built walls around their campuses. Okay. So they became all campuses in the compounds, and their link to the community got disconnected. Otherwise, the campuses used to be pretty open in the United States, and that changed dramatically. And Lehman College happens to be in the Bronx area, which has similar problems. So what did we do? We said, no, we cannot do it. We have to make a change in this attitude. You must reach out to the community. You must do some gestures. Even Rafael Vignoli has designed a building. He made some efforts as well, by the way. He designed an amazing building on the campus on the other side. So what we did was we forced them to change their in design. We forced them to change their compound wall. The property line was here. So we forced them to change it to this, and half the building basically came out of that compound wall, although it is within the property line, making you feel that it is not within the closed borders or boundaries or any of that stuff. And so that's why this building looks like it's outside the campus in a way, but it is within the property line. It was a small move that the campus even today appreciates it, that what they did, because they feel like they reached out to the community in their small way, So cultural implications and all of that plays a very. This little building, by the way, costed $6 million because of underground tunnel connections and security systems, and it's just crazy, The building itself is 2,000 square feet. So if you look at it, it's like $3,000 a square foot. Some ridiculous numbers, because the tunnels and connections, very complicated otherwise, So with that as the first thing, I'm going to show you 3 projects. And and this is the work that I showed you was my last 20 plus years work, and the projects I'm going to show you is last 1 year's effort, right? I have joined Arcwood about a year ago, and so in 1 year, and we're working on some of these projects. So the first project I'm going to show you is in Mumbai. It was an IT complex. And one of the biggest change that happens here, as you know, is people want flexibility in FSI. Today is 3 and tomorrow is going to be 5, or day after tomorrow is going to be 6 or whatever. So they told us from the beginning that we need to consider a 3 and a 4 FSI. So what we thought we would do is we would show them visually and graphically what 1 FSI means and what 4 FSI means, and its relation to the parking requirement. So 4 FSI look like this, while parking look like that. So you can just see graphically how disproportionate the things are. And then what we said was, if that's the case, Alok, please add. Alok is here. There are many people worked on this project, but. So what we did was we said, well, fine, if that's the case, perhaps we can design a building in such a manner that is 3 plus 1 equals 4, or we can design a building which is 4 at one time. So we chose to do 3 plus 1, and so even the building gets built up to a certain point, it looks complete, and if it gets added, it still looks complete. So the picture is always complete, and that was the intention, the very fundamental principle we followed in this project. And as you can see that we did a lot of other aspects of the study. I just want to show you, just for this building, by the way, we're trying to do a lot of climatic analysis up front, just to see what it means. And we even did the daylight analysis to think, because it's an IT kind of a space, and we were saying from day one that perhaps we could use no artificial lighting during the daytime. As it is, by the way, the IT spaces generate tremendous heat with the machineries and all kinds of stuff. So heat generation is tremendous. So how do we first reduce the heat generation? And one of the things we were trying to do was to see if we can optimize the daylight. So that's the daylight analysis. Or we did a shadow analysis. And then we did a solar heat analysis. and then we came to certain answers that we added the so-called the shelf, light shelf, but we put the light shelf outside rather than inside. So some people would call it a canopy for protection, but we were using it as a light shelf so that it would, along the border, it would constantly remain the temperature at a reasonable hours, and daylight is still reflected from the top into the building. Therefore, an artificial light during the daytime may not be required. My office, by the way, many years ago designed a building with Renzo Piano for New York Times headquarters. They also don't use daylight at all during the daytime. The entire building is designed in such a manner that core to the window depth to all of that stuff is so wonderfully thought through. You may not like the building or you may like the building, but there's a lot of thoughtful process that went into that building. And so we were driven by those kind of a thinking. I won't dwell too much on it. The parking, I mentioned about the parking structure. So typically, here in Mumbai, as you know, the parking has to go up, cost, this, that, below grade, soil conditions, water conditions, rock conditions, all kinds of stuff. So we're trying to then just study and understand the parking structure itself in terms of its facade or integration of art or whatever we do, and trying to solve that. So I thought I would show you some of the studies. And the end result was a project that is pretty contemporary, by the way. I mean, all the work that I have done, by the way, is all contemporary interpretation of. If the mosque could do what I did, the office building is much easier to deal with in terms of contemporary language. And so we did design this building in a very clever manner that at 4 FSI it would still look complete, and at 3 FSI also it would look complete. There was a study drawing. I think I forgot to point out. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So let me show you a second series of projects. So we have designed 2 museums so far. I don't know. So one of the museum is called Plus M. I won't tell you more. A lot of confidential work. So we did a museum which is based on the idea. It's about 100,000 square feet. Based on the idea that perhaps we could create 4 cubes and tie them together, so the cubes act as gallery spaces, while the rest of the space is public space. So that was the idea. We didn't take it too far with it, but it's very, very interesting in many ways, because on one side we were trying to propose a glass facades, but at the same time, as you know, the museums require practically a dark environment on the inside. So what we were doing was we were trying to create a box within a box and float them on a body of water so that it could become really a gallery space, and the circulation space was all along the outer walls. So people can walk on the outside while the actual exhibit space is on the inside, which is quite a clever thing to do, because now climatically it helps, every aspect it helps, plus the museum gets animated by the movement of the people itself. So in many ways you can put people on the exhibit itself. In many ways you can think in that stuff. And then more recently, our whole team, actually practically everybody's here, we worked on another museum project, and I want to just talk about this in few things, point out few things. A process of exploration. So many ideas were explored, and there was a tremendous analysis done in terms of how this entire museum could work functionally and otherwise. We also created diagrams in terms of understanding what it would do to create a museum on this specific site. And there were 2 or 3 things that dictated our approach. One was we wanted to create a visual porosity. We wanted to create this museum based on modular system of some kind. So you can build it, you can expand, you can do all kinds of things. And the third thing we wanted to do was we didn't want to create a singular building, and we wanted to always break down the scale of it. And so those are 3-4 things that we went through a tremendous search for, and in the process we ended up with something like this. I mean, the entire roof system is based on these sort of wings of a butterfly or a bird or whatever it is. They're all in varying heights, and it breaks down the scale. So it does look something like that. You want to add anything to this, or?
I think important also aspect was the context which we related, and that influenced a lot of design thinking into this particular, because the context was more important than the building. And the museum is always very human, but here the proposal, they wanted really built as a destination rather than museum, because museums generally are very hard to survive their own, because you don't have enough people going there, they don't have revenues. So the thinking also went one step, that how to keep this place alive most of the day, 24 hours, 365. So it's just not the museum, you want to go again and again and again. So that was also the thinking behind the design philosophy.
Thanks. So this was the end result, and it's actually along the water, and we were playing with materials, all kinds of things. So. And then the last project that I want to show you, which is being done out of studio in Pune, is we were very fortunate to get a call from China saying that we want you to design this project for us in China, in city of Qingdao. Qingdao is a city on Yellow Sea, and those of you who may know, may not know, but Qingdao is a famous Chinese beer which is made in city of Qingdao. It's quite a nice city, by the way. So, and they gave us this about 130-acre site, and we're still waiting for the next round of the work on this project, and to design 130 acres with a total square footages of about 22 million square feet. The program was absolutely amazing. Amazing meaning, I can't tell you if this goes ahead and happens, it's like a dream project. It has museum, convention centers, exhibition halls, technological spaces, trade floors, residential, commercial. I mean, it has everything known to mankind on this project.
Research institutes.
And research institutes and all kinds of things that they wanted on this. So our first task was to create a program. The usefulness, so to say.
Important, they wanted a largest data center in the world. So
That is true, by the way.
Find actually where is the largest center first, and how big it is, and how, like, from Apple to Google to, there are many software companies which has the largest data center everywhere. So we have to prove that we can build even much larger.
Well, that is true. So it's the point, I think what it brings to a point to make here is that for every project which I did not, it's not just a collaborative process. The steps are 3 steps. First is research. So that's the part of the research. For every project, by the way, our whole team goes through an initial research. Research on multiple things, including climate to everything, people, and what do they wear, and what do they do, and all kinds of research work is done by us. Then, of course, we sweep through all of that research and then try to see what makes sense for us. Maybe it is much more self-serving, but that's what we do. And so that's the first phase. Then the second phase is the part of exploration, where we explore many. I think for this one we like probably had 12 or 16 different options for such a massive scale project. Within 1 or 2 weeks we came up with about 12 to 16 ideas, right, Sages, if I remember correctly, yeah. And then out of that we narrowed it to 4. I flew to Beijing from here, presented it, and then we narrowed it to 2, and then those 2 were presented to the client at the end, and then they just love the project, but we will see what happens. So point I'm making is the process is research, exploration, and then applying it in terms of the design and sense and all of that is what we routinely do for all of our work. And so just to show you the option one which we presented, we're very much intrigued by the paintings of China, which sages actually researched all of these paintings of the, I mean, you know that the people from China believe that they are they ascended from the dragon and they are the people of dragons. So he researched the paintings of great Chinese artists of the dragons and the dragon, the movement of the dragon and all of that stuff. So we're very much influenced by some of those paintings and interpreting those paintings and I'll show. So this particular one is a painting shown and that painting influenced us in terms of what we did and one of the things, one of the things that that happened was the data center is this big snake-like structure that you see, which is basically a data center almost 2.5 million square feet. It will be one of the world's biggest, and data center is not occupied by people. So the question is, how do we deal with it? So we made as a part of the component of the landscape, and so the people can literally go over, and it's just it's like one of the contours that is going through the whole site, and so that's what we did in this particular case, and that's what we're trying. By the way, the site is right on the Yellow Sea. I mean, literally right next to it. Right in front of it is nothing but a Yellow Sea. One of the most spectacular views, and the conditions and the wind conditions, and I mean, just amazing. The temperature, climatic conditions, by the way, of Qingdao are very similar to New York. Pretty much the same, actually, almost same. It snows, by the way. Snows, the temperatures go below 0 degrees. So it was very easy for us to interpret all of that. Since I live in New York, I know exactly, and the buildings we design in New York and all that stuff. So we applied that thinking here as well. And then in case of a second option, as you can see, the paintings that you see here, this one of this favorite painting of mine is this one on the left-hand corner. That one of the Chinese artists interpreted dragon as a complete circle, as so beautiful in many ways. So we were interpreting that shape, and sages worked very hard on this particular scheme, who is quietly sitting here, with of course support of many others. So the interesting thing is that we did integrate all of that, and it worked extremely well from programmatic point of view, because all these low circular spaces could be used for research institutes, all kinds of projects, like almost like creating a campus, while the rest of the project, entire site was about bigger scale, and the museums and all kind of stuff was integrated as well. One of the thing, by the way, did in this particular case, it is still at a very, by the way, I would call it as a very preliminary stages, so it has a long way to go through. But we did, as we have Vastu, they have Feng Shui, and Feng Shui in simple terms is wind and water. That's all it is. So what we did was we always integrated water and wind conditions. In this particular case, if I remember correctly, is north, and it was this corner, right? The other corner, and the other wind conditions were south, west, and north, east for the wind conditions, which is unusual, by the way, because usually if there's a water, the winds usually flow through that, but during the certain months, the wind conditions change to opposite direction, which surprised all of us for a few months. So we actually took advantage of it, and we sort of let the whole winds go through the entire campus in such a manner that, and then that's one of the reasons why some of these shapes the way they do and what they. We have also a tremendous climate analysis we did for this as well. So with that, I don't think I have anything more. Yeah, so I showed you the 10 books that I published. I've also, my FX File company, we have published monographs, 2 monographs, so part of it. I published my autobiography in Marathi and Gujarati, by the way. And I want to leave you with 2 final thoughts for you to think about. And I like these two thoughts one is by Bruce Mao, and it clearly says that it's basically states that massive change is not about the world of design, but it's about the design of the world. I think it's all architects should think about it. The design applies to everything we do on a daily basis, and any opportunity is not a small opportunity, and we can all collectively influence the built environment so that it is not only useful or workable, but it's also aesthetically improves the quality of life. I mean, that aesthetics should not be forgotten, you know. And some of you may not know it, but many of the Western cities, by the way, the approval process, and we talked about that earlier in Britain, in Canada, all over, they have urban design committees which first approve the design before it goes to the building department. So aesthetically they make a judgment whether urbanistically it makes sense for the city, whether it connects to the city. I think that's something that India needs to consider very seriously, so that the level of aesthetics would improve here quite a bit. And the second thing I just want to mention is that John Hockenberry, and also I love this statement, he says, quote, he says, "It is perhaps only the sensibility of design that that can mediate between the poles of meaning and noise." There is so much noise all over, and it's not the sound noise, but it's the visual noise that we all see. And every time I come to India, I mean, as much as I'm proud of my motherland, my eyes never rest for more than few seconds. It's very, it makes you very uncomfortable at the end of the day. So the question is, what can we do collectively as professionals to contribute to that built environment so that it is more meaningful, reducing all this visual noise, you know, that we all collectively create at the same time. I'm, by the way, equally guilty of it, but I just thought I mentioned that. So with that, thank you so much.